Yes.
Do you have something you'd like to read?
Yes. I'm Kimberly Pierce, Maurice's wife, and we were together in 91 as well, all the way to his death. Death by cop is not how I envisioned my husband's life ending. Maurice and I thought we would grow old together. Instead, our future was stolen by the Austin Police Department and a system that chose a narrative over the truth. Maurice's family moved from Houston to Austin for a better place to raise their children. I wish it would have been the safer place they'd hoped for. Instead, it was the worst thing that would have happened to Maurice and would ultimately lead to his death. As teenagers, just 15 and 16 years old, we were questioned by APD without our parents' knowledge or an attorney present. Maurice was held for 48 hours and subjected to aggressive interrogation tactics conducted by Hector Polanco, including being shown graphic photos of the girls and falsely being told that the gun he had was the murder weapon. I was only questioned after showing up at the police station when being told they were supposedly looking for me. Their first attempt to manipulate me included telling me Maurice was in a cult. When that didn't work, they told me he was visiting one of the girls at the yogurt shop that night trying to make me jealous. And right then I knew this was an interrogation full of deception. I was with Maurice from 7:30 until 11:15 that Friday night on December 6, 1991. I was his alibi, and that alibi would prove to be very inconvenient for their narrative, leading to their constant harassment to change my statement. APD even went as far as coming to my job after his death to try and have me change my statement and the timeline. Maurice was cleared in 1991 and let go. However, in 1998, Detective Paul Johnson honed in on Maurice for a reason I have yet to understand. Our alibi witnesses were ignored. His sister and others who could have corroborated our whereabouts that night were never questioned. The tactics remained the same, aggressive. The evidence was ignored, and the narrative of 4 troubled boys served as the focus. Maurice tried to prove his innocence by willingly giving DNA, taking lie detector tests, and even undergoing hypnosis with APD. He spoke to them several times willingly. Maurice was targeted, taunted, and portrayed as a monster and a murderer despite clear evidence that did not support those claims. His DNA did not match, the gun did not match, and there was no evidence tying him to the crime. Yet, APD and the district attorney pursued him relentlessly, determined to make him pay for something they knew he did not do. In 2003, District Attorney Ronnie Earl held a press conference stating that due to a lack of evidence, Maurice was being released. At that point, he'd spent 3.5 years in jail and more than 2 years in solitary confinement. It was only after pleading with the warden that he'd finally be allowed to take his chances in general population so he could go outside to feel the sun on his skin. Maurice carried his written dismissal with him at all times, even though it showed capital murder pending further investigation. The stigma of being accused of these murders followed him everywhere. They were going to persecute him in any way possible, at every traffic stop, by showing up at his job, by showing up at my job, by following him, and by coming to our house several times to question him as a witness. His record made it extremely hard to gain employment or even be added onto a lease. We had to explain his situation and proclaim his innocence over and over again. Later, in 2009, District Attorney Rosemary Lindbergh said that new DNA evidence did not mean the confessions were false, even though the DNA didn't match any of the 4 boys. They were all still under investigation for the yogurt shop murders. It's shocking to learn how the real killer was stopped in El Paso and detained only 2 days later with the actual murder weapon. How was this missed? APD's careless handling of this case put Maurice in a position that tore him and our family apart. Our daughter lost her father and her innocence, and we have never been the same. Our weekends and holidays were spent visiting Maurice, separated by plexiglass. We attended countless court proceedings that should never have existed. I watched my husband plead for someone, anyone, to hear him and call into question the lack of evidence. The fact is, you're guilty until proven innocent, and if the right people accuse you, your guilt is assumed. This was not the work of a serial killer. This was the result of the Austin Police Department's institutional failure and abuse of power. There is nothing the APD can do to repair what they chose to break, but there must be accountability. Independent oversight, reinvestigation of cases handled by those involved, and systemic reform to ensure that no other family endures this kind of unnecessary loss. Maurice never deserved any of this. He deserved life, dignity, and justice. He deserved his innocence. I am truly sorry this horrific crime happened to the girls and their families. I am grateful the case is finally solved and Maurice's name is cleared. But unfortunately, he did not live to see it. Thank you.
There's two photographs displayed behind you. Could you briefly describe what is in those exhibits?
Yes. It's Maurice, our daughter, and me. This is at her wedding in June of 2010. Here, before he was arrested, I want to say probably the year before, in 98, a family portrait we had taken. Mm-hmm.
That is Kimberly Pierce, the widow of Maurice Pierce, who died in 2010 from a violent confrontation with Austin police. Lindsay Richards, a defense attorney, and Judy Maggio, former anchor here at KVUE, joining us. Again, your reaction to what you just heard, both of you briefly.
I mean, I think it's horrific to learn of some of the harassment that both Forrest and Maurice Pierce experienced. I do want to remind everyone, though, that to be fair to APD, that his ultimate, killing that occurred was after he had sliced the neck of the police officer. It was very violent in nature.
Right.
I think that deserves to be pointed out.
Yes, and his daughter, Marisa, who just took the stand, will tell us and has said, it came from just years of trauma that she says her father faced. Let's listen in.
From the very beginning, the presumption was not innocence. It was guilt. Guilty until proven innocent. In 1991, my father was a shy 16-year-old boy who loved anything automotive. He was smitten with a girl he met in PE class, my mom, and spent most of his time tinkering on cars. He had a natural gift for it, and there was nothing he couldn't figure out how to fix. And that's exactly who he was. That's exactly who he was when someone needed help. If life knocked you down, he sat beside you until you found your footing again. He would spend hours holding space with you, talking about everything and nothing. He knew how to be present. He knew how to make people feel seen. In his own quiet way, He knew how to fix more than just cars. He knew how to steady the hard emotions life threw your way. That simple teenage life quickly shattered in December of 1991 when he sat in a room across from a detective named Hector Polanco. For 2 days and nights, his family had no idea where he was. For hours, there was no proper record of what occurred. Graphic crime scene photos from one of Texas's most horrific crimes were passed around carelessly, shown to a frightened teenager who was lied to and manipulated into believing the gun he had access to was the gun used. Inside that room, there was no evidence, only a detective and a narrative. A narrative so completely false, it feels evil. It's this story of a boy who was a troublemaker, a magnetic leader with disciples, and later a story of a ringleader and a mastermind. Those words, ringleader and mastermind, used to float around in my head as a little girl, as I tried to grasp what was happening in my world. I learned at a very young age that the very institution meant to serve and protect was capable of evil, capable of lies, and not just harmless human error, but intentional corruption and deception. Recently, I sat with an attorney who described my father standing before the judge in 1999, saying he would give them whatever they needed to clear his name. And the attorney stopped him. He told my father he could not allow him to do that, not because he was guilty, but because the system was dangerous. Because any evidence, any test, any DNA could be taken and bent to fit the story they had already decided to tell. What does that say about justice? What does it say when an attorney knows openly and plainly that the truth is not safe in the hands of the very system meant to protect it? What does it say when an innocent man must be warned that cooperation could be used as a weapon against him? That is how broken this system is. That is how deeply the corruption runs. My father would be hogtied in his front yard on October 6th of 1999. Then he went against the advice of his own lawyer and voluntarily provided his DNA, took a lie detector test, and even agreed to hypnosis, all to prove his innocence. From 1999 to 2003, despite a complete lack of evidence and repeated proof of his innocence, his alibi, his DNA, a past polygraph, and hypnosis, he was forced to spend more than 3 years in a concrete box. More than 2 of those years were spent in solitary confinement, locked alone for 23 hours a day. Those years were so dark, but he could barely speak of them afterwards. I have spent my life wondering what kind of suffering drives a strong and good man to say he would rather die than ever return to such a place. After his release in 2003, the harassment did not stop. Police followed him, watched him, treated him as a suspect in perpetuity. I witnessed it as his daughter, but those stories are for another day. Let me be clear. This is not the work of a single monster. This is not one moment of evil. This was the result of a justice system that actively hunted my father harassed him, twisted facts to fit a narrative, and tried to force a confession to support a story they had already decided to tell. It was the result of officials who were never questioned, never checked, and never held to the standards they swore to uphold. A system that was created to protect the innocent instead became the very thing that destroyed him. For my daddy, it was a nightmare he could not escape. A traffic stop because my father rolled through a stop sign turned into what felt like an entire police force flooding a neighborhood, searching for an unarmed man who fled on foot, who fled from pure terror and severe PTSD from what he endured for years at the hands of this broken institution. I've yet to hear that dispatch. Were they searching for a man who rolled through a stop sign and fled? Or were they searching for a man named Maurice Pierce? What I have heard and seen, I call into question. That night, I had to listen to my daddy's worst fear come true. And then I had to listen to him stop talking to me. What I would come to realize was him taking his last breath. My world grew darker that night. I lost my anchor, my soft landing, my home. The pursuit would have never stopped. People wanted to see him suffer. People wanted to see him die because of a narrative created by detectives with no evidence. Alibis were inconvenient, evidence was irrelevant, and narratives reigned over all. The world grew darker for me the moment APD took my innocent father into custody. And again, when I saw him chained for the first time behind glass. And again, when I saw him in a courtroom for the first time. And again, when I hugged him in a small room with chains on his feet after years of only touching glass. And again, when a cop forced me inside as he proceeded to harass my father and throw him on top of his car. And again, and again, and again, until the last time. My world didn't just alter. It completely shattered. To listen to the sounds of my daddy, someone I completely love and adore, live his absolute worst fear, and then to share those last moments with him unknowingly. It's completely shattered me. This was not justice. This was institutional failure. And the cost of that failure was my father's life, his dignity, and his future. My father paid the price. I do not get to see my father live in a world where everyone finally knows what he had been saying all along, that he was innocent. I do not get to see his relief. I do not get to see his peace. To the families of Eliza, Amy, and Sarah and Jennifer, My heart breaks for you and your girls. My father's heart broke for you and your girls. There are no words I can offer, but I will hold you in my prayers for the rest of my days. To the Austin Police Department, the DA's office, and to Paul Johnson, your tunnel vision stole my daddy's future. You took his peace, his freedom, his dignity, and his life. My father was not a headline. He was not a ringleader or a mastermind, as your story would have it. He was an innocent boy, an innocent man, who was good to his very bones, and who mattered. Words to describe how incredible of a human being, how amazing of a father he was will never be enough. I'll miss him for the rest of my life because of your tunnel vision. I thank God every day that I was able to experience a father's love that has no end, a love I can still feel to this day. I thank God for the sweet glimpses of him I see in my children. I may not see justice fully realized here on this earth for him, but I know that I'm not alone. There are countless other families carrying similar grief and unanswered questions, the same wounds left behind by an institution that refuses to correct itself. Unchecked power cannot continue. Tunnel vision cannot continue. Accountability must come. Reform is coming. It has to. And finally, the man who made me who I am today, my best friend, my daddy. Daddy, you have your name back. The world finally hears what you were trying to say all along. Daddy, I